Thanks to those who are in person here. Nora. Hi, Nora.
No.
Hello. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Eileen. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Eileen. Thank you for coming in person. And thanks to staff. And I is called to order. The meeting is being live streamed, right? Okay, thank you. Now let us stand up for land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, as well as the importance of establishing and maintaining cultural safety through learning from Indigenous peoples and perspectives. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Arts. In the next item, review and approval of agenda. Thanks to Lian for sending the meeting material on Wednesday prior to the meeting as our norm. I think you have a chance to review. Anyone proposing the adoption of the agenda? You proposing, Tracy?
I'm sorry?
I thought you said that you're proposing the adoption of the agenda. Okay. Anyone proposing the adoption of the agenda?
Okay, so the chair and vice chair cannot move items from the floor, like the agenda and the minutes, so the membership has to do that, please.
So I have Elisa raised her hand to move the approval of the agenda.
Thanks, Lisa.
No, my hand is raised because I have a question. It's not to move the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
We also can't have questions until the agenda has been moved onto the floor.
It's a question about the agenda.
Let us do it, and after that you have to ask question, please.
I'll move to adopt the agenda. Jordan, class.
Yes, thank you. Anyone second?
Second, Jana Grodowskis.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone opposing? Okay, here none, that means adopted unanimously. Thank you. Now, back to the question that you had.
Hi, everyone. This is Lisa, Easter Seals rep. Through the chair, I have a question regarding just the order of things on the agenda. So I know number 5 is working group updates, and there was a lot of stuff around things in email with the working group updates. So it sounds like it might be more of a conversation. And I was wondering if number 8 on the agenda, so having like there was correspondence from other boards and other letters from, I think it was like 2 or 3 other boards discussing things, if maybe we can move that up on the agenda to happen before the working group update. That's my question. Thank you.
sorry, you wanted us to move the SIP funding, corresponding on the SIP funding up?
Yeah, number 8 on the agenda that had, there was a few boards that had written letters and okay, on the agenda that Leanne had sent, it was number 8, but I guess on your screen it's number 7. So if we can move that before the working group update.
I think, what about, keeping the order and trying to stick to the time that we allocated for each item?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank
I
you.
just want to make sure it doesn't
Yes,
it doesn't get pushed to another
yes.
meeting because it's the very last item on the agenda. And given the last few meetings having to be extended, I just didn't want it to get lost and get pushed to another week or not have quorum anymore.
Okay, thank you for
That was my only concern. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll make sure that, even if one item is taking a little bit long, we'll kind of, let it pending and go to that. Okay, thank you. If there's no other comment, we'll go to the declaration of possible conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest to be declared? I think none. I assume none. Thank you. Now you also received the minute from April 11 meeting. I'm sure you have the chance to review. Yes, I see. I recognize Melissa.
Yes, thank you. I don't exactly know how to address my comment because it's not short. And I did send you a note. I'm not sure if you saw it or not. How do you want to address this?
I think that is, if you have some, things that you think, is missing from the minute, you just share with the members here. And we, as you know, we'll have liked, in the process to get that, we know that we're all busy. You probably noticed that lately. And if you have anything that you think we should correct,
Yep.
and
So
Leanne will probably take notes.
yeah, and maybe the conclusion on this suggestion is if I follow offline with you and Leanne and whoever else, but I'll state my general concern. So on the one hand, it's great that the minutes are much longer than usual. That's wonderful. In particular, on the PAC on SEAC motion, which I was very involved with, I was a little concerned that the comments seemed to be more from one perspective, and they seem to reflect suggestions that were made, but I don't think were necessarily accepted. But that's not really how it comes through in the notes. So if somebody was just reading them, they would think that this was the consensus instead of these were suggestions. And the other perspective on those suggestions, as in, no, we don't think that suggestion will work right now because of this reason, isn't there. So I'm not saying that it has to be longer. I'm just requesting that it be balanced, and I don't know how we, end up addressing that. So for example, there's a few suggestions in there that seem to be almost declaring that this is how it will be, but then we passed a motion that says the opposite. And I think that the consensus of SEAC was reflected in the vote for the motion, not so much in the conversation notes that are there. So I don't want to make a big deal of it. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I just don't feel comfortable voting to approve the minutes as written now. And it's a little bit different than our usual tweaks to shorter minutes where we just say, oh, you got the date wrong, or, something like that.
I think that is, for the sake of managing the time, I would suggest that we move to, subsequent item of the agenda and give you the time to really specifically, note down exactly what the change that you need to the minute, and we'll come back to it. Is that okay?
Okay, sure, and I don't want to take up,
Toward
I
the
don't
end
want
of
to
the
take up
meeting.
valuable meeting time
But
on
now,
process.
because, yes, in
Yeah,
the mean.
what we
can-
could do is if we run out of time is, maybe I can send you and or Leanne a note and figure out what it is, and Leanne could recirculate an amended, so that we don't vote on it today, because I don't think we may have time.
I
given
think that
that-
is just, take the time now to try to, review and take note of what you think we need to change. We'll come back to it toward the end of the meeting. If toward the end of the meeting you're not finished, we'll see how we'll proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think any other comment before we move, to the next item? We'll come back while Melissa is reviewing and noting, writing down what change need to be made to the minute. I see there's no one. Now we move to the action log. Lian, can you please share the action log with us so that we go through?
Can you see the action log now?
Yes, please. I think
Okay.
that is, you probably saw that the very first action there is the recommendation to consider special education as study driver. We still, I think I saw now it's Louise and Nandi. Did you look into this to move this so that we can have something?
Thanks, Jean-Paul. This actually is sitting with Craig Snyder and his team because we don't come up with the drivers, but I believe that it has to go to trustees as well. So it's a longer process. It's not as simple as saying we are going to change the strategic drivers for the budget process. So it's with his team to take forward to trustees. That's where we left it at. I don't know if trustee Arts has anything to add.
Yeah, for the strategic drivers, the special education recommendations were included. There were two sets of recommendations, one from SEAC and one from the Environmental Sustainability Committee, and those recommendations were incorporated into the final version of the drivers.
Thank you, Trustee. That means now special education is one of the strategic driver.
It's embedded, like the strategic drivers are very broad. It's like different types of things as opposed to being like three statements or whatever. It's a very long document. So special education and the supports and some of the language that was provided from this committee are embedded throughout. So the different statements on different topics reflect the need to support special education.
I think, is it possible to have, this final version so that we can reflect on as a committee?
Yes.
Thank you. That means, I recognize Nora.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so when the strategic drivers are used, because my understanding is it's used as a feedback tool from different stakeholders. Is that correct, those broad categories? And is it used to collect information from people or input from people? So my only concern about it being embedded, which normally, Michelle, I really want, I'd love it if everybody thought like that. But the problem would be the total absence of the reference to the population means they're vulnerable. Because other people who aren't having it flagged in their mind as they're trying to embed things are excluding kids with disabilities. So something I think needs to be tweaked about that, whether it's a driver itself whether there are questions within the strategic drivers that reference disability. Because it's been my experience, anti-oppressive isn't specific enough to disability for people to think about disability when they say it. We're not there yet. So something needs to be done. So whether I would even if all the trustees knew SEAC was concerned it wasn't a driver would be improvement to me. Like if every trustee knew this committee had concerns that special education wasn't explicitly stated as something that had to be thought about when budgeting, I think our committee would feel differently, but I don't even know that we could guarantee all our trustees know that we have a concern about it. So to what degree are trustees aware of this committee's concerns about what they put down for those things and how it centers students that come for discussion from us? Does that make sense? Like, I don't even know that trustees even know we're worried about special ed being a strategic driver.
And I think that is, I would suggest that, we hear from trustee Arts, next time, the next meeting, with what is, what the trustee have done. And now we will have something in hand and
I can add a little bit I can add a little bit more when I do my trustee update because the first stage of the budget pieces are coming in a couple weeks.
I just mean all trustees as opposed to portions of them. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the whole board.
Yeah.
Thanks.
okay, thank you, trustee. That means the first thing that, she will kind of enhance what she just said now during the trustee update. And we expect, at the next meeting item here, that she will share what, the statement about special education in TGSP strategy driver with us. Okay. And now the next thing, was I think the autism statement to be discussed in more detail in the APWG. Did that happen? Yes.
We haven't had a meeting since then, but we're very open to it. And I see Julie's name on there and mine. So maybe I'll just ask Julie or Leo to follow with me and we'll schedule a date.
Okay, thank you. And the motion that went to the feedback, I think that is now it's staff to tell us where we stand with next steps. The motion about data, is it any concern on track?
Yes, we're on track, as it was passed at the last FBEC meeting to go to the next FBEC meeting.
No, I think, no. When I asked if it's on track, it was already at the feedback meeting, and there were some milestones, that needed to be achieved. Are we on track to achieve those milestones? Or to meet
Yes, we're on track to go to the next FBEC meeting, as was discussed at the last FBEC meeting.
No, I think we're not talking about the same thing. I'll let Nora.
So it's kind of the same thing as the last comment.
Move your microphone down, please.
Sorry, thank you, sorry. It's kind of the same question as the last comment, which is, when are the entire Board of Trustees going to hear information about special education before they pass a budget that impacts all our students? That's what I really want. The bottom line is, when will they hear the data that we requested? And the motion actually states they will hear it before they make a vote on a budget that affects our students.
So it goes to FBEC because that's the committee, and then it goes to board on May 24th, I believe it is.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, then we can say that, Nora, to your understanding, we are on track. Eh?
So my understanding is if it's going to board May 24th, and that's what we had asked for. So have decisions been made about special education that impact special education prior to hearing this information? Or the fact we had concerns?
If I may, through you, Chair. So the SEAC approved a motion requesting data, right? So then that goes to FBEC for consideration, and then FBEC, if that is approved, goes to the Board of Trustees for action. It doesn't generate the report, it goes to the Board of Trustees for consideration.
So am I allowed to continue the follow-up question? Okay, cool. So then my question would be, really, given the amount of time it takes for that, I should have been told in February that they will not hear information before they vote. Is that where we're at? Like, is the reality that the motion is kind of moot? Because by the time it goes through the convoluted process of who gets to decide whether a whole board of trustees will even approve generating the beginning of that information, and we're in May, the reality is, it doesn't sound to me like that board of trustees is going to hear data about special education that we requested before they vote.
I think, thank you. I think Trustee Ard want to weigh in.
Don't, so the motion went to the last FBEC and it's gone to board, it's been approved. The staff are on track to present data at the next
Oh, okay.
FBEC.
Yeah. Okay.
The board, the next FBEC is when we start the budget process. It won't conclude until optimistically the end of June,
Okay.
but, because of how late everything has been from the ministry, maybe not into the summer. So the budget process hasn't started. It'll only start with the presentation of the GSNs next week.
And just because I'm a stickler for being clear, and that will mean, that hopefully, if FBEC says, here's this report, or passes this part, the entire board of trustees will eventually hear information about special education. Thanks.
I think that is what I would suggest here. I mean, that is so that we can move. If staff, can please, staff, I'm looking at Louise and Nandi, please, if it's possible, as you prepare, the leadership report for next meeting, to kind of have, and remind us of some of this milestone in your leadership report so that it's clear and what we have done and what we can expect. And when. Is that something that is feasible?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. What is confusing to me, if I just go back, there are two motions for data. So one has been approved and another it's going through the process, Nora. So staff are very supportive of sharing data, and we're very supportive of building a timetable based on that last motion, right, for the PAC on SEAC agenda. So we can speak to that later, but we want to get in a cycle of providing SEAC data throughout the year so that trustees are aware and that you are being able to consider that data and give us your best advice on how we can be supporting supports and services for our students.
Yeah, that's exactly what, Louise, I said that we were not talking about the same thing. Okay. For that motion, I'm taking note that this update will be a section of your leadership report next month. We agree, huh? Okay, thank you. Melissa, anything that can that wait, or?
Just a quick question, and it might be implied in the answers already, but I'm just wondering, it would be so much appreciated if SEAC could get a copy of the data that's going to the trustees when it's going, like that we don't have to wait a couple months.
Let us wait to see, the update that we're expecting next month. And it will have probably some specific question when we see what is happening.
Yeah, sure. I'm just suggesting if it's going to the trustees, it'll be in the public minutes or meeting materials anyway, but to save everybody having to go and keep checking and find it, if they could forward a copy to Leanne and Leanne send it to us, that would be appreciated.
And Nandi or Luis, can you reflect on what Melissa just said about?
Thanks, and for the question through you, Chair. The flow of information needs to be done thoughtfully, and our Board of Trustees are generally the first recipients of that data. So we're going to be using the PAC on SEAC calendar, and when we are able to pull off data from ONSIS that is timed appropriately and flow it through the channels as it needs to happen, right? So trustees first, then coming to SEAC.
Sure, that's great, I understand, and thank you. I just,
I think
I was
you-
referring to Nora's data, though. Like, the questions that Nora asked that are going to go to the trustees, once that's public, if it could flow to Leanne to flow to us,
Gotcha.
that'd be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you. Now, I think that is, you also see the item 12, they want to see 12, the further screening. No, you too fast. 12. Yes. Information about screeners for K-2 and how parents are informed will be sought from the early year department. Staff, is it something that,
Unless this is a different one, this was sent out by Wendy Terrell when Leanne was away, the information on the early screeners. We also have an entire section in the special education plan that speaks to early identification in the TDSB, including early identification tools that the TDSB uses.
okay, thank you. That means it's done. Next, Lian, we having the community living, challenge today. Request for ONSIS data.
That's incorporated in the approved SEAC motion. That's moving to FBEC. Oh, sorry, that's going to PSSC. I'm still getting my acronyms. So it's on track, Chair.
Okay. And now that is the next is the motion on leveraging the park on SEAC, calendar. You speak to that, when you present your leadership report, right? That's what I heard. Okay, thank you. Those are all, an overview of the action log. Yes, Melissa, did we miss anything?
No, I was wondering where and how one might suggest a new item to add.
Sorry.
How would I suggest, or when would I suggest if I have a suggestion to add to the action log?
Just now.
Okay,
Just now we are on action log.
just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So this is actually from my experience in doing some research lately. I wonder if we could have the SEAC webpage be organized so that there's also a heading that would say motions and maybe another heading that says reports. Because right now, the only way you can find a motion that was passed or somebody's report is you have to know what month it's in, click on minutes, scroll down to the appendices at the end of the minutes and try to find it that way. And it's not a separate document, so you can't even send somebody a link. So I could follow with you or Leanne on details after, but the idea would just be that if somebody wanted to search through what motions has SEAC passed, there'd be a heading where there'd be a link to them.
May I suggest that the effective practice working group kind of look into this and clear wording the process of what you want and share with us at the next meeting?
For sure, that would be great. We've
Because
actually talked about
that is your
this.
mandate, yeah?
Yep.
Your mandate.
We've talked about it, but we'll get more specific.
Okay, thank you. Now, any other question, comment? Thanks. Now, the next thing is, do we have Elizabeth already with us? Yes, I see her. Yes, Elizabeth, it's up to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. And if we can please have co-host abilities to, Tana Turner and Angel Woodside so that we can share the slide deck, please.
Lian, can you do that, please?
Yes, I'm doing it.
Thank you. while Elizabeth is getting ready, I think last week I attended a meeting for a CAC's chair on MYSP. I think it was a training, and it is as we finish up the training that because it was an item on our agenda, I would say that will be a good idea for Elizabeth, who is leading this work, to come and share that with the whole group. As you know, those are here, have been here for some time. When they were developing, TSB were developing its first MYSP. We had the director. The director came here twice. John Malloy, at the time, he came here twice to engage SIAC. Now we're having Elizabeth who's leading this now. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. And I just would like to take a moment to introduce myself and the two other members who are also here to support. So my name is Elizabeth Addo. I'm Assistant Superintendent for Leadership Development, Employee Engagement and Continuous Improvement. And part of my portfolio is to support the renewal of the multi-year strategic plan. It's also my pleasure to work alongside Tana Turner, and I will just turn it over to her to introduce herself, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tana Turner with Turner Consulting Group, and we've been contracted to work with Elizabeth to support the renewal of the multi-year strategic plan.
And Angel, are you on?
Yes, I am on, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. My name is Angel Woodside. I'm the administrative liaison for Elizabeth Addo, and I am helping her as we move through this process of renewing the multi-year strategic plan.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting us to the SEAC meeting tonight. We want to give you an update around the renewal of the multi-year strategic plan. We know this is part one of a two-part series. Jean-Paul invited us back for part two, where we're going to be actually eliciting your feedback on the multi-year strategic plan. Because this is already in motion, I'm sure that you've already gone through the land acknowledgement. So TDSB is approaching the end of its current strategic plan, and it is reflecting on multi-year strategic plan in order to renew the plan. So over the next months, TDSB will engage in a number of consultation, including community advisory committees, school councils, and ask for their feedback to contribute to the renewal of the strategic plan. The multi-year strategic plan assists school boards in setting long-term strategic priorities and goals. It also includes a guide for student achievement and well-being, as well as it addresses both academic and business practices. Each year, the school board is required under the Education Act to create a multi-year strategic plan. Multi-year strategic plans usually last for a minimum of 3 years to a maximum of 5 years. The ministry sets out specific requirements for the strategic plan. So TDSB also wants to ensure that the strategic plan addresses its priorities for equity, truth and reconciliation, safe and inclusive school environments, effective stewardship of board resources, and delivery of effective and appropriate educational plans that meet the diverse needs of the TDSB students. And when we're thinking about engagement goals, key to renewing the strategic plan and creating something that is relevant is learning from all segments of TDSB's school communities. And we know from lived experiences that the school system is working well for some students, but not working as well for students from other communities. Particularly important is that we hear from these communities as we emerge from the pandemic, and we continue to see the impact of the pandemic on these students and these communities. It's even more important that we get their input. So throughout this process, we want to promote understanding of the important role that the strategic plan plays in guiding the direction of the TDSB. We want to ensure that we're gathering various perspectives through the various modes from all members of the community about their vision for the TDSB's futures for the next 4 to 5 years. And we want to ensure that we're empowering all members of the school community to feel that they have contributed to the renewal of the plan and that they feel that they're part of creating a more responsive organization. As we move on to the next slide, you're going to see the renewal process is divided into 3 phases. And we are in the current phase. We began in March. So from March to October, we're going to be gathering input on the desired future and the priorities of the TDSB. We will then move into phase 2. In phase 2, we're going to be analyzing the input that we've received, and that will span from October to November. So we'll review, consolidate, and analyze the input that we receive from all sources. And then we'll move on to phase 3. And in phase 3, the time frame is around November to December. And that's where we're actually creating the renewed strategic plan that identifies the key priorities for TDSB in the coming 4 years. We have a variety of engagement methods for us to be able to hear from all segments of the TDSB community, and you can see them there before you. Students, employees, Indigenous communities, a variety of CACs and school councils. And we want to hear from employees, students, a variety of CACs, and we want to be able to use this input, and we'll be setting up time not only now, but also time in the fall to have conversations for the input. Okay. Now, your role, so as we do this engagement, especially with CACs, we support hearing directly from them, but we also have self-facilitation guides. So we know that each of you has a relationship with your community. So there's also a facilitation guide where you can self-facilitate smaller conversations when you'll be able to gather the input. And so if you're thinking of doing that, we identify the best way to gather the input from your community. There'd be a facilitation guide that will support, and the facilitation guide is supported in 10 different languages. And there's a way to capture that information. We will also be able to provide a slide deck, also a video from the director to help set the context. And there's support for advertisement from the multi-year strategic plan project team, as well as the parent and community engagement office that helps support spreading the information. This facilitation guide that you see before you, as I said, is a very useful tool. It's translated into our top 10 languages, so community groups or parent groups may want to facilitate their own conversations and then share the guide with them so that we're able to do so. And that is the end. So I'll just pause for a second to see if there are any questions around the process. And as we said, the chair has invited us back to your June SEAC meeting, where we will walk through the engagement process and capture your feedback on the 5 pillars.
Yes, Nora.
So I'm just curious, I know right now you're engaging in a census process. So when you make the strategic plan, so will you have that information before you finalize this plan?
Yeah, so
baseline
there,
data for that. Sorry.
we will be relying on some portions of the census data that, as you said, is currently going on now, especially in the area of student voice, because we are asking students on how they are experiencing school, and that data that will be collected will be incorporated as part of our renewal.
Thank you. I'm just going to remind people that we didn't give the adapted version of kids with intellectual disabilities in the mainstream the same opportunity to capture their voice. So again, my concerns about having rules for special education kids and ISPs versus the regular class. Thanks.
Yes, Eileen.
Try trying to navigate all these tabs. So sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Elizabeth. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to confirm one thing. I see through my community representation role into the agency in supporting community living, I see predominantly in the post-COVID environment, the students that have a lot of challenges. On top of their current challenges, mental health plays a big part of this. So I'm wondering, in your multi-year strategic plan, how are you going to capture this predominant challenges? And it's very difficult, I think, to build on what Nora mentioned. I think this is a part that if we are able to help as a committee, I think all of us would like to play a part through our different lenses.
Mhm.
Be awful, everybody, but
Thank you very much. And through the chair, you know, this is the reason why we are working through this process. So you, as part of a member of SEAC, has not only your own individual lived experiences, but your how you engage in your work in every day. And these are the type of feedback that we want to be able to hear and be able to embed in the renewal of the multi-year strategic plan. So, for example, what I hear you saying is, and what we hope to capture next time, if mental health and well-being is increasingly more important to you and your community and what you've seen, then how do we capture that as part of the feedback? So that's each individual's unique identity, lived experiences are what we want to hear to be able to capture in the renewal. Because quite frankly, since 2022, we've gone through quite a lot, and we know that there are many communities and parents and caregivers that have had disproportionate experiences because of COVID. And so how do we take that into consideration as we build the renewal?
thank you.
Thanks. So next we have Bronwyn, and then I suggest, because Elizabeth is going to come back next month, that if you have any further questions, you can send them by email, and then we'll have a more fulsome discussion next month. So Bronwyn?
She didn't hear.
Bronwyn, you had a question?
Okay, maybe Brahman is not, okay, yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I think that is, we probably, you know, as discussed, I don't know how you will share the homework that we get to member prepare before June meeting. We probably share that if there's anything that people need to do before, to get prepared before the meeting, when you will get our more detailed discussion next month. Please do that through Liane.
Yeah, so what we can do, so what Tana suggested is review the current pillars, and we could send the 5 pillars that we're going to have a conversation to Liane, so that, you know, as we walk through, those are the pieces that we're going to be reviewing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. I apologize. I was having connection issues. Sorry, I'll be brief. My main concern with having younger children in the TDSB, I'm still concerned how we're reaching the younger years for getting their voices. What is the full strategy long term? I feel like our younger years are constantly neglected. And I would like to see what is proposed for moving forward to getting more families and people to the table to discuss. Obviously, with our children being an ECE, you can't sit down basically and say, you know, what are the problems, but what are the strategies and plans that are being looked at in place on how to really try to understand what our younger years have gone through, because they've had no voice really ever, unless it's educators who are sort of speaking for them, which could be for their own gain, or it could be families or organizations for their own gain. So little ones got dragged to politics, which I've never liked. So that's my main concern. Secondly, I also find with COVID, so much has happened to our all age groups, but there's still no accountability from what's happened. There was so much that didn't have to happen to our children, and we can't go back in time. But I would like the TDSB and in the strategic planning to all collaboratively with Ontario as well to take accountability for what happened. And I think that's part of the strategic plan where parents will, like myself, will regain trust, because I have no trust now for multiple reasons for things that have happened to our kids and the impact it's suffering. So strategic planning could be 4 years, but there's still no acknowledgement of the long-term collateral damage that has happened to our children during COVID through the school system. So those are my big concerns. And then you'll regain trust from families like me again, because it's very hard to see these things and really feel that it's going to actually mean anything long-term for trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Rowan. I think that is, Elizabeth and her team took note, and Leanne also took note. She's coming back next month and she will share some of the template or framework with us. We'll take the opportunity to kind of put all the concern and issue that we may have into the template that you share with us and discuss that next month. Thank you. Thank you again, Elizabeth, and to the team.
Yeah, I just say, can I just take a moment just to echo that you've asked what's the homework. So the homework is to be able to think about what would you like to see in the renewed multi-year strategic plan, in addition to what is missing. And so if there's an accountability piece or a measurability piece to the goals that are put in place, then come back and share that. And just with the youngest early year students, and that could also be something to be reflected in the multi-year strategic plan. The student voice is captured through the student census is one way, as well as through the parents could capture the student voice as well. So we're looking forward to having a more fulsome discussion when we're back in June. So thanks very much, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you all. And that is the next, thanks to Tracy and Eileen, and for agreeing to share the challenge that that you see every day, our children facing from the community living perspective. Thank you. The floor you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aline and I have met several times, so I think I'm just looking at the time here, so I think we'll go quickly through some of the slides, just so we can get out of here on time. Aline's not. Hold on, sorry about that. There we go, perfect. All right, got it, okay. So briefly, the first thing we want to mention is May is Community Living Month. So it's pretty, it was great that we actually came on the agenda during May. Community Living Month is a province-wide annual awareness campaign to recognize the benefits of community living movement. We hope you take part, look at #InclusionMatters, look at your local community living. In Toronto, it's obviously Community Living Toronto. Look at Community Living Ontario for things that are going on, and hope you'll join in. It's an interesting year. So May is Community Living Month. Community Living Ontario is celebrating 70 years anniversary, and Community Living Toronto is actually celebrating their 75th anniversary this year. Again, there's going to be lots going on as we move along, and Aline and I would just like to highlight some of the things that the Community Living Movement and Community Living Toronto do. So what is our vision? It's important to remember the vision of Community Living Toronto. It is a society where everyone belongs, and a society where everyone is valued. Our mission is about fostering inclusive communities by supporting the rights and choices of people with intellectual disabilities. And our core values are inclusion, choice, and diversity. And we'll focus back on those things when we get to the challenges of the students that we support at the TDSB. So what is an intellectual disability? And Community Living Toronto, even though everyone that we support may have an intellectual disability, we also support other individuals who may not have an intellectual disability. So we do support people with autism, and we do support people with intellectual disabilities as well as physical disabilities. But generally speaking, for most of our services, the criteria is you must have an intellectual disability. People with intellectual disabilities face challenges in their cognitive function that can affect their ability in personal care, language skills, and learning abilities. And the key thing for our services and understanding intellectual disability, it must arise before adulthood. So all the people that we support, the intellectual disability must have been diagnosed before adulthood. People that we support also face negative stereotypes and assumptions, but the gifts and uniqueness and values of each person should be supported and celebrated. Just little facts about Community Living Toronto does support people from all ages, from birth until seniors. But just some interesting facts that I think most people should become aware of and why we focus on education. It's estimated that about 66,000 people in Ontario have an intellectual disability, and only 25% of those people working age have an intellectual disability or actually gainfully employed. In Canada, over 70% of working age adults who have an intellectual disability and live on their own live in poverty. And in Ontario, more than 15,000 adults who have an intellectual disability are on the wait list for supportive housing. So when you're looking at those statistics, you start to see why Community Living Toronto, and you'll see in the future slides, why we're very passionate about inclusive education opportunities to hopefully change some of these things around. Our impacts, what does Community Living Toronto do? So last year, we supported over 4,000 people, and of course, this includes children, youth, and adults. And typically, the easiest way to explain Community Living Toronto is that we have 3 streams of service. We have supported living, community participation supports and respite, and specialized supports. And again, I'll just touch on a few of those services. I'm looking for Aline because Aline brings the parent perspective, so I just want to make sure we just touch on a few of them. So what is supported living? It can be, the purpose is to a range of housing and support options that foster choice, independence, and neighborhood connections. We operate more than 300 housing units, and that can look different. Everybody thinks group home. We're moving away from group homes, right? So a lot of our services are now in their new building developments are what we would call supportive independent living. We're trying to create more inclusive communities, can I say. We're actually building some buildings where we'll be part of the neighborhood and we'll just have some apartments in there. And that seems to be the push, just to make sure that the people we support are not isolated. We're not creating little mini institutions all over again, right? I can see Nora nodding, yes. We do operate specialized resource homes, though, for people with autism who may be experiencing extreme behavioral challenges and need a clinical approach. And that is for children under the age of 18 who may need to live away from their families for a while. But we are creating 60 new affordable housing units, and that's by the end of this year, all over the city of Toronto. Community participation supports and respite. Again, we're looking at inclusive experiences that promote neighborhood connections and personal interests. If you're out and about in Toronto, you may see them. We're doing the storefronts all again, right? Getting away from those day programs, those little mini institution day programs. So the move is away from those things. We have them all over the city. Main and Danforth. Main and Gerrard is the newer ones, West End, East End. So they are all over. Day supports, we also have fee for service. So Community Junction, that's a beautiful storefront on Dundas in the west end of the city. Creative Village Studio is even further west. And Shadow Lake Center, which is a camp we run up north, which can be rented out by anybody during off-peak Girl Guides go there, Phil Milby's there, so it's really great. Really. And we offer adult and children's respite options, and those are trying to be expanded right now, as we learned during COVID, when most of those respite options closed down, how many families really struggled, right? So there will be a broadening of respite options. And specialized services, individualized clinical services that optimize quality of life for the diverse range of people we support. And this can include early childhood services, so working with supporting families who have their children with disabilities in daycares, and to the transition into the school system. We have person-directed planning. Hopefully that'll be broadened more so that people are making choices with their lives and supported choices. Family support coordination, I think typically we support over 700 people just with family support coordination. And that's working with families who have their children living at home, helping them access resources and educational services. And we have adult protective services, and that's for working with individuals in the community that live on their own. And again, these are just little snippets. In between, there's a whole bunch of different programs. Educational consultation and support. So this is when we start focusing more on the services to support families in accessing their choice of placement within the schools. So we do support moms through our online group and through our Moms Retreat. Last year, 54 families were provided with one-to-one educational consultation support. And that's not just a one-off support. I think I should clarify that. That can be hours of support. That could be in the form of just reviewing, especially TDSB policies with families, attending their IPRC meetings, their IEP meetings, all those. So that falls under that. And 30 developmental sector staff. This is becoming even bigger, helping educate the staff in the community that supports people with intellectual disabilities on students' rights within both boards, and the TDSB and the Catholic Board. So we also offer digital projects. Again, there's more than count, but these ones I thought may be the most useful for the people on this call. Connectability.ca, that's done with funding through the ministry. You'll find resources for early childhood, youth, adults, seniors, transitioning, all kinds of resources, some for more staff-oriented, family-oriented, or child-oriented. My Community Hub, this is a platform that Community Living Toronto started many years back, and now other agencies are there. So if you're looking to access camps or any other kind of fun fee-for-service resources for people that have intellectual disabilities, this is a great place to start. A lot of them are free too. And I mentioned that to staff. I know they're always asking if we can forward stuff to the families we support. So these are three great websites that might be really helpful, like quickly, right? My direct plan is more for when families have special services at home funding or passport funding, and they need help organizing the payments. It's a whole computerized system that does it for it. And this is one of my favorite things. Last year, we launched what's called the Community Living Influencers. And this is our way of supporting those with lived experience to be front and center of everything that we do. It's a passion of mine. I actually supervise and work with this group of great individuals, so I always like to pump them out. They did all this work together, so you'll see their little Bitmojis, and they're influencers, so that they do have their Instagram page, Facebook, YouTube. They're in the process of making videos, but you can see that they've each identified their own main focus of influencing. Not that they don't do a lot of different things, but this is one of their main focuses. So if you'd like to follow us on Instagram or Facebook, I know they would love it. And their statement is, just being, they want their voices heard. Okay. Educational challenges. Let's get into some of the things that affects the people that Community Living Toronto supports. I've highlighted some that have been highlighted in several reports and from my own personal and my work experience. So attitude barriers. right? There's still that challenge. There's still low expectations for a lot of the students that have intellectual disabilities. Stereotype beliefs are still there, right, which are limiting the success of the students. Inclusive educational practices. It's been a really difficult and challenging year for the people that we support. There's been many calls for assistance for students not receiving proper accommodations or supports, being told again to go to smaller day, modified day, slow transition, half day. That seems to be on the rise with the families that we're supporting. Yeah. And of course, that leads to burnout for parents, right? When the parents are having to advocate continuously, and the rules seem to be changing for many parents. Other educational challenges is good and productive relationships. Relationships seem to be, and I know everybody's struggling with mental health, like you mentioned, Aline, both staff and parents and students. Relationships seem to be cracking right now, is what we're hearing from the families that we're supporting, to extreme measures. Conflict resolution, again, we're seeing high rates of conflict with the families supporting their children in school, rates that we haven't seen since at least 5 or 6 years ago. So that's been very disappointing to see those are on the rise again. Strong and positive leadership. Again, parents have made it quite clear, though, that when there is buy-in or support from the higher administrators like principals and higher response time from staff, their experience is a lot better. But again, they're finding that that's cracking as well. Names have changed, and no faulting anybody for retirement. I mean, that's what happens. But they're finding there is a lack of response from staff, especially at the board, and they're finding a lack of response from trustees as well. So moving forward, how do we change some of this? I think, you know, we talk a lot about attitudes and beliefs, and I know my colleague across the floor talks a lot about that as well, right? You know, setting up higher expectations for students with disabilities. The higher the expectation, the better the kids do. I think we know that. And so hopefully that will become more of a reality later. Access matters. Exclusion and lack of access creates barriers to learning and relationship building. Absolutely. As I said earlier, families are being asked to reduce their children's hours at school again, take home for lunch, please come support at recess. Like, I've been in this field for quite a long time, and I'm hearing things again that we haven't heard for a while. So access matters, right? And I know it was said when we had the presentation for Down syndrome about, he shared the lovely story about his daughter being in class and learning from others, and that is something Community Living Toronto absolutely supports as well. Relationships matter. We know I, as an advocate, as a parent who has had to advocate for both my sons, we know that relationships do matter, right? And I always advocate to build those relationships, and just making people aware of being available. I think that's what's changing right now, the availability of staff. And because things are changing, right? It's just we're all getting back on our feet. But to remember that, you know, building those relationships is important. Leadership matters. How a principal stands or, you know, stands beside people with disabilities really reflects how the staff do too as well. And I've met some fabulous principals. I won't give a shout out because then I'm going to forget one, but in the last month, I've just met one that's just absolutely astounding. And I guess the last thing, before I hand it over to Aline, and I put this one on a slide below by itself, sorry, belonging matters. Students in inclusive settings were far more likely to be included in extracurricular and unstructured school activities, meaning that they had a much greater opportunity to socialize with their peers outside of the traditional classroom. And again, just I know some other people in this committee have said the same thing, and I want to reiterate it. Community Living Toronto definitely supports choice. Parents need a choice. Absolutely. We would never judge a parent's choice. But the more opportunities for inclusive education, we see the benefits. And we go back to that first slide where people are unemployed and living in, not in their neighborhoods. And this is where it all begins, in school. So thank you. And I'm going to leave Aline to talk from a parent's perspective.
And I just want to echo the importance of starting from, because Brian mentioned about starting from day one, from K to 2. And I find that because parents are so busy with many things, so a little bit of help, communication, I think through Mr. Chair, I think that's very important. From my own perspective in supporting family, I'm also a specialist in the field in job development and job coaching, and I work with various programs that is supported by the province. The funding comes from the province. We are also seeing changes with the Employment Ontario funding, because their focus, if you are looking in the field right now, that their focus is actually, they use the word type C clients, right? But type C only meaning that people with challenges, people that are harder to support, that have multi-tiers of challenges. And I think that comes back to belonging matters. And I found that even though from my own experience, my child, many challenges, but through the community support, the school support, the tie-ins of everybody, communicating, I tried sometimes. I would say from a parent's perspective, sometimes I may not be, because of my days are just like so working, supporting the child, back to work, not enough sleep. So I'm not trying to say this is atypical, I don't know, I cannot judge, but this is part of my day and how I look in my week, in my month, and it could be quite tiring. And I find that just from a parent's perspective, I have an ailing cousin that I've been seeing for 10 years. So she fought cancer. This is just a little snippet, and I don't mind to share it. For 10 years that she's in remission from cancer, and then she just let me know that cancer came back. So I said to my family, hey, look, I really want to see her. So what should we do? So it started from the family, and then it started with community partners like Tracy and everyone. They were able to give him a little bit more support. That made my week not need to read taxes ASAP, urgent taxes from my spouse and my daughter. It really helped. And I appreciate that, because people would listen. And I also want to encourage everyone to walk together and to listen, not to judge. Because everybody's story is unique, and every child's unique, and choices are so important. I understand about funding. Of course, funding matters, but I think with every pocket of funding, we could really try hard. And I'm looking forward, and I've seen many coming through a graduation diploma, certificate, wherever they are, when I receive them in a professional environment or provision environment like Project Search. We talked about, it was initially scrutinized, that it wasn't, I don't know whether my associates were here, that it might not be able to took away well. But then now, how many years?
Oh my
Maybe
gosh.
5 years?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so things are coming, but it always comes from baby steps and those who believe to walk with us. And I hope that part of those are people that's sitting here and also, members that are calling in and also together. And I think that we really need to do it together. And the reason that I want to stay with Tracy, because Tracy did fantastic work and partnered with my son's school. And I said, okay, I'm going to do 4 more years. And my family's like, hello, you're going to do 4 more years? But they are very supportive, seeing how my son, even though very difficult coming through, and my daughter, she's in the field, and because what she saw, she decided to do her PhD in this field of accessibility in partnership with her school and university. So I think little pieces matter, and it's this personal story, I don't mind to share it, but I also think that everybody has a story, and I'm hoping that everybody listen. And I know that numbers and targets are so important. Data is so important, but every data has a story behind it. So when we look at data, we look at stories. And I'm trying to take it back home when I work and my spreadsheet tomorrow, when I'm answering to my funders, that I remember what I shared tonight with you as a parent and also as a specialist that grew with you all, because everybody shaped me where I'm at today, everybody. So I just want to thank you, Tracy, for her hard work. And hopefully 4 more years I'm going to be with you, and then we'll see how we can bring it together. So I always believe not only one inclusive model, there are many ways to reach the goal, many ways to reach Rome. So I hope many ways to reach the TDSB multi-year strategic plan. So that's all.
Okay.
Sorry, it took a little bit more.
Thank you,
From my heart.
Tracy, and thanks, Eileen, for sharing your experience and also for sticking around to give back. And what I would suggest, I think that is we didn't receive the presentation before. The same thing that we did with autism. Thanks for the great presentation. Or maybe we share that with us through Lian, and we'll probably use the roadmap template to try to see if we can map, some of the things that relate to the template that we receive for the roadmap, and probably have few minutes next month to see if there's any reflection that people will have, and hopefully we'll probably use this to do the multi-year strategy plan, kind of homework, and make sure that some of this are embedded into the process. Thank you again.
You're most welcome. May I ask a quick follow-up question? Because for me, a lot of things needs to be take baby steps, and I'm looking for outcome as well. So if I may just ask a question and maybe a challenge, if I may, to challenge myself as well. How are we going to build alternative curriculum? Because a lot of our folks, especially the ones that we serve, may not be able to achieve. I know IEPs are part of the goal, but how can we achieve alternative curriculum and be able to build towards they have a better living after they graduate from TDSB?
Yes, I think that is. This is a great question. We'll probably take some of this, and I thought about it. When I was seeing some, I'll do the exercise myself, mapping that to what TDSB has committed to do, for children, and to see if there's any gap. Some things will probably emerge from there to build that into the work that the multi-year strategy plan work. If it's okay, let us. I'm looking at time. If it is really very urgent, okay, thank you. Now, next we're giving the floor to staff for the leadership report. That means the next step from the community living, they will share the presentation with us through Lian, and we will do the mapping using the roadmap template and reflect next month. Okay. Staff, Louise and Nandi, it's up to you now.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair. For members of SEAC who I did not have the pleasure to meet at our last online meeting, just wanting to say hello and to let you know that I have taken over for Audley Salmon, the incredible Audley Salmon, who was the Associate Director supporting the special education file, and now I have the privilege of taking this leadership role and supporting an incredible team here at the Toronto District School Board who dedicate their heart and soul to be supporting students with special education needs. I'll be passing our presentation time over to Nandi to go through our leadership report. It's before you and has been sent to you, and we're happy to receive any questions that you may have. In regards to it, of particular note, I want to highlight the sharing of the changes in the special education, the annual plan. So welcome any questions that you have in regards to that in particular. But I just wanted to outreach to the committee members to say I'm going to be sending an email to you personally and inviting, if I could, to have just a brief conversation with you over the phone so that we can connect and get to know each other, to hear about the association that you represent, where your heart and your passion is, and how I can be best supporting the goals that you have, why you come every month, and give us your very, very best suggestions so that we can really be building a community and a team together. To be making our supports and services as strong as they possibly can be. I'm looking for your recommendations, your ideas, and how I can best support you. So please be looking out for that email from me, and I'll be asking about a time and a date that best suits you so that we can connect and get to know each other a little bit, particularly those folks who are online. It's sometimes much more difficult to develop relationships, so I just want to get to be just a little bit more personal. So now I'm going to invite Superintendent Mandy Palmer to take us through the report and offer discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. So I won't be going through every single item. You've all received the leadership report, and I do want to be able to give time for questions or comments. However, one item that we would like to talk about is the PAC-on SEAC. We know that it's a motion that is going to go to PSSC. However, we as staff do think it's beneficial to have a calendar of sorts where we outline what we would be doing each month, what we could bring. We think it would be helpful for staff as well as for SEAC members. The recommendation that we would make, or what we would probably try to do, is some of those pieces don't really align with TDSB pieces, so we would want to be able to adjust those pieces from the existing PAC-on SEAC calendar, so we could do that. So I just wanted to mention that piece there, and certainly open to taking questions about that. So some of the things that we would like to highlight is how we've been using UDL and DI, differentiated instruction and universal design for learning, in terms of assistive technology tools to support students and to have access to increase access to learning for students. We have continued with professional learning sessions for educators in intensive support programs, and they're specific to each of the ISPs. So for example, ASD, developmentally delayed classes, MID, gifted, and so forth. We also have our third parent engagement session. We always do it in two pieces. We do the 2 LCs together and then another 2 learning centers together. So those are going to be on Tuesday, May 30th and Wednesday, May 31st. And the flyers were shared out with schools to share with families. So we hope to have as good a turnout as we did for the last 2 sessions. Leanne, I'll follow along, or Manshu, whoever's doing the screen, I apologize, I'll follow along. We also participated in the TDSB Ukrainian Welcome Fair, and we had a booth there where we talked about special education services that we provide in the TDSB. And the event was quite well attended with over 300 participants there. I won't talk about the multi-year strategic plan because Elizabeth just walked us through that, and she'll be back in June for that. So the next item is the special education plan. As you know, the ministry requires that we engage SEAC in providing feedback into the special education plan, and historically, TDSB has done that through the SEAC Special Education Plan Working Group. And this school year, the group has met 4 or 5 times. A few meetings were canceled for attendance issues. But the group did provide quite robust recommendations, as they always do, that we did take under advisement. The piece here I would like to flag is our special education plan. We get recommendations from staff across departments, from schools, from families, from parent advocacy groups, And we take all of those recommendations under advisement and make amendments as appropriate. So Leanne did include in the mail out the amendments to the spec ed plan that we're proposing for next year. And this is a repeat item from our last leadership report. As you know, our special education and inclusion annual report, like other department reports, are presented at PSSC, and ours was presented and actually went to board as well, where we had some additional questions and was approved for receipt at the last board meeting. And finally, in terms of restructuring, we are going to be restructuring our learning center coordinators and consultants for the upcoming school year. And this is a model actually that TDSB has had in the past. So each learning network will have a consultant that will be responsible for working very closely with the learning network superintendent to engage in school improvement planning processes, centering students with special education needs. And we will be increasing the coordinators to 3 per learning center as opposed to 2 that they currently have right now, which we are hoping they will be able to build capacity through professional learning for school-based staff and to take on some more of the IPRC and other special education process pieces, which will hopefully expedite those pieces for parents. And at the bottom is the IPRC as well as the PSSC from Shameen's team, the data for those teams. So thank you, that's it for me, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you, Louise and Nancy. Before, opening up to question, I think that is already shared this comment. I think it will be a good idea to go back to the process that was established. I mean, we would love to hear about the special education, kind of product through, the special education working group, and to have the SIAC member to discuss the amendment that, coming from the working group and approve the amendment before getting it to you. I think that it's good to know that you're working in collaboration, but maybe we should probably go back to the process that we had, for many years. And it's the same thing, the same thing with, the report, the special education and inclusion report that went to PSSC.
So
I think that is, let's finish, please. I think it would be a good idea, once you have your final draft, I know that it's a department report, so that we have it, not like this time that we learn about it when we were at the feedback meeting, and that is happening. I think those are the things that, the process that we probably have to go back to what we used to do in the past, to make sure that we all, we feel that, this is something that was generated by us, and maybe a recommendation for the new special education plan coming from SIAC before moving, to seek the board approval before it's sent to the ministry. That's a comment that I wanted to make before opening up to the colleague, if they have any question, comment.
Chair, may I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, sure.
With that comment, thank you. Was that suggestion in regards to the special education annual plan? The annual report, sorry, thank you, Nandy, the annual report that went to trustees? Or are we talking about the special education plan that the working group does?
I think that is now, it is, the way that both, I made a comment.
You meant for both?
About both. For the special education special education plan, there was a process, that we had a special education working group, a special education plan working group, doing the work, reviewing the previous year, plan, coming to the meeting, to the full, committee with some recommendation for change, additions, and we'll have to review them here and approve or reject as a group. before it goes and making a recommendation to the board. But now what is happening is that, which I think that is COVID. With the COVID, we need to find another way to have things done. But what is happening now is that staff is getting feedback from the working group and now pushing, informing us that is happening. There's no motion or recommendation coming from us, asking the board, to approve a plan that's going to the ministry.
Thank you for the clarification. And I want to express my gratitude to Superintendent Palmer that what she discovered is that the special education plan, which has to be submitted annually to the ministry for approval, actually hasn't been coming to the SEAC as a whole.
Yes.
So we were wanting to do that this year. And if you've seen the special education plan, it is a very, very, very big document that resides predominantly online. So as a first step, what we wanted to do was highlight for SEAC as a whole committee, because the working group has been working on it, but to highlight for the whole committee the changes that are part of the plan. And our hope is to be working with the calendar next year, to be taking parts of the plan that the team are very busy modifying and streamlining, and bringing those through to SEAC on a monthly basis. So it's not so enormous, and that we're having an opportunity to engage in conversation with SEAC, plus the working group, if that is the will of SEAC to continue with that format. Chair, I would just like to clarify the role of SEAC in the development of the special education plan. And as you know, there's legislation that is connected to directing how staff make sure to connect with this important body. The board approves the plan and submits it to the ministry. Our duty is to engage and consult with SEAC. So a formal motion for approval at SEAC does not happen as part of that process, but it's very important to us to make sure that we are consulting and getting feedback from SEAC. So that is why we very transparently showed you the changes this evening in a hope to better our practice. Thank you.
Yes, I think, thank you, Louise. I think that is what I'm saying is what I've seen here for the last 12, 13 years that have been around. I think that is, if there are some of the things that I've seen in the past in the special education and this plan, that, we would decide here as a group to make a recommendation directly to the board that we want this to happen. I think that's exactly, and coming from the working group, saying that this is what we discuss as a committee, just make a decision to recommend that this be there, or something that was removed. We discuss here as a group. We say that we think this should remain there, and in order to make it something that is solid, we'll make a recommendation to the board. Then that is what I'm saying. Those in terms of process, and the same thing. And I said it's the same thing. Maybe we should probably have an offline conversation. What is more time is needed for the special education report. I think that was not a good thing for us to learn about something like that going to PSSC at a meeting that we happen to attend, and one trustee said that he's going.
I understand.
Just saying that we need to do those things that we need to make sure that
right.
in the future we consider some of these things. Not if Nora and myself, if we were not in this room at the feedback meeting, I'm not sure that we would have known that something like that was happening.
Understood.
Which is not something. It's not. I'm just saying that it's a process. It's a process that we need to maybe
Yes.
trying to readjust. I'm saying readjusting because I know we have been doing it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
just to go back to it.
And through
We
you,
don't have
Chair.
enough time. We'll probably have, offline conversation. I just wanted.
Sounds fine.
It was just a by the way, I
Thank
didn't
you.
expect us to take more time on this.
Thank
Do you have any comment or yes, Nora?
Just about the leadership report, and it's something I've wanted to point out, just as an inclusion organization. I just get concerned sometimes about how much I read about autism and DD ISPs getting professional learning and not regular classes. So when I'm reading through the report and you're sharing that you're offering learning for those populations that Almost Community Living just talked about today, it almost sounds like we're going after placement places, like, so it says ISPs right in it. And so who's helping the kids who want to stay in the class? And then when I look at the restructuring piece, one of my concerns is we've got more coordinators now and fewer consultants. So are the consultants the people helping people in schools and the coordinators are running the process of putting labels and putting kids in places? So as my organization, I just want to say, do we just choose a process that puts people into ISPs and prioritize that process over getting information out to classroom teachers?
So, Nora, this is just a snippet. We have been presenting from September to now various professional learning that we've been doing. This is a snippet, and this is one aspect of it. We have had to do professional learning for staff in ISPs because of the union and collective agreement pieces and how staff are placed in ISPs. It's not usually, or sometimes, or always a staff member or a teacher that is a specialist in developmental disability that is placed in a developmental disability program. But this doesn't mean, because we're saying here that we have provided this to support those staff, that we're not providing professional learning for staff in regular classrooms. So the TDSB, we are fully inclusion first as per Regulation 18198. We completely support that. But we recognize that we also need to provide professional learning to our teachers and support staff in ISPs. With regards to your second question, no. What we're trying to do is to get the coordinators. The coordinators bring with them more specialized knowledge and depth of breadth of experience and leadership, as well as skills in special education and inclusion. So not only will they be doing processes, but they're going to be, one of our main drivers as shared in the annual report for us is professional learning and capacity building. So they're going to be responsible for that, but everybody is working directly with schools. It's just what is their more of a leadership role that they're taking on. But we don't have the luxury or the liberty of putting all the professional learning that we do into one leadership report, and this is just a piece that we're highlighting.
So I'm just letting you know from my optics, so to your point, that's why I asked the question, almost all of them have referenced ISPs. I don't mean just this one, I mean past ones.
Yeah, we've done two that we've mentioned it because we've done the initial set of professional learning for ISPs, and now we're sharing it again because we've done a repeat session and that we wanted SEAC to know, just like we keep SEAC updated on everything else.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I want to know how with regular class gets too, if there's in some way, even a sentence or something about it happening, because it just looks invisible, that's all.
And to emphasize our work towards inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So just two quick questions. One is, you mentioned the special education, inclusion, et cetera, report that got sent to PSSC. I think we saw a short one. If there was something longer, I'm wondering if we might just start a process of, after you've sent things to trustees, if it might go to Leanne and we could circulate it to people. It would probably help with a lot of the questions and confusion that people have. And then the other piece is, you may not have the answer today, but just sort of for future. It's been a topic of conversation every year. We know that you always try to do PD, which is great, and then there's always constraints on you can't enforce it, and how do you make it happen, and how much of it happens, and all of that. And that's a topic of interest we'd love to hear more about. We know that there are constraints in the system. I think that in, for example, working group conversations, we've learned a little bit that maybe there's a little bit more of a push to have online resources that you hope people might access on their personal time, or when they have a specific issue, look it up. But I think in general, we'd love to hear more about all of the things that you're doing on that.
So thanks for that, Melissa, and we certainly will keeping SEAC updated on that. So for the PSSC annual report, as Audley had shared and Louise had reiterated, it had to go to trustees first. It's a trustees report. But as soon as it was sent to trustees, Leanne sent it out to the entire SEAC. So you would have received that, and that was not a summary version. That was the actual report, and it was within an hour of it being sent to trustees. So we couldn't really send it any faster than that.
No, that's great. Thank you. I didn't know if there was a different version, and it just saves people having to go look it up. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Any other question, comment online? No?
Sorry, Jean-Paul, I just wanted to express my sincerest gratitude to the special education plan work group, Melissa and Richard and Aileen and Isabella, who worked on providing feedback on behalf of SEAC. And as Louise mentioned, next year, we will make sure, just as we have budget come to several SEAC meetings, the spec ed plan and budget are the two regulated pieces by the ministry, so they will need time at each of the meetings. And we're, with Louise and I hopefully both being here for a longer period of time, and we have some, what's the word I'm looking for, some consistency. We're hoping that we can get the process, corrected where the report comes to SEAC as a whole, or the amendments rather, and then it goes to the board, which has to go in June for approval. Then we continue to work and do all the website pieces, and it's submitted to the ministry by July 31st. So we're really hoping that coming out of COVID and coming into new leadership, the process will go a little smoother moving forward. Thanks.
But thank you. Coordinating that with the working group so that they're not surprised, what is coming from the leadership. Okay. The thing that is, just to confirm, the journey for the Park on SEAC motion, it will go to PSSC on Wednesday. Okay, thank you. That's the journey for the Park on SEAC motion is, from the last month approval, exactly what we said, that we won't do anything with it before it goes to the PSSC May 10. Okay. Is the amendment to the minute ready?
No.
Not yet?
Leanne and I were emailing, and there was a suggestion that maybe I would send it to you guys afterwards.
Sorry?
Leanne and I were emailing each other about it, and I think there was a suggestion that I might send it to you after and defer approval of the minutes until the June meeting so that everybody would have a chance to look at it without spending too much time.
Okay, thank you.
The changes won't be drastic, but I think they're important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would suggest now that I know that Beth, was suggesting that we had a conversation on the SIP funding correspondence, and she also had some update on the ADHD. And Beth?
Hi there.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm off camera. I just have a bit of a cold today. Jean-Paul, are you referring to the ADHD working group?
Yes, I think you had some updates. We want to make sure that share the update, and we couple that with the SIP funding conversation. What do you?
I think so. The working group, the ADHD working group update. I guess there's two things. The first thing being that we had suggested. Or we had highlighted a change that needed to happen to the April leadership report with regards to support for ADHD students. The terminology ADD was used in the leadership report, and that's not correct. The correct terminology is ADHD. And so Nandi very promptly responded to that concern and made a correction to the leadership report. So I thought that was important to highlight in the meeting, just even as a sort of a teachable moment, if you will, just in terms of terminology with regards to ADHD. No matter what the diagnosis is, the terminology is always ADHD, not ADD. And then the second thing is and I had sent this out earlier, or I think it was last week, the list of resources that the ADHD working group put together that was being sent to the ADHD steering committee for consideration to be put on the TDSB website in sort of a place on the website where people could access ADHD resources. So we're very proud of that document that was put together, and just wanted to highlight it again. And then just ask, I'm very just conscious of the timing. We're getting to the end of the school year. And just curious as to like sort of the best way to follow up to ensure that we hear what happens, how is that, when is that document being presented to the steering committee? When will we know, if it's going to be on the website? Just sort of like, what's the best way to follow up on that document? So that's a question, I guess, but that's pretty much all for the our working group update. Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Okay, thanks, Bev. Any reflection, Nandi?
So thanks for those comments, and thanks to that ADHD subcommittee or working group for your work as well. So as you know, and this had stemmed from a motion that SEAC had put forward a while ago around ADHD. So the TDSB had struck an internal ADHD staff committee, and we've been working on getting that going since COVID. And so your resources will be brought, and I believe centrally assigned principal Effie Stathopoulos had come to your meeting. We also have 2 centrally assigned principals on that working group. So you have and will continue to receive communication around next steps. Because it is an internal staff committee that spans several departments, the work does take time, and we do want to make sure that we're putting really good resources forward. So thanks for sending yours that we can review with everyone on that committee, and we'll continue to update the SEAC ADHD work group as we continue with that work.
Sorry,
Nandi, is there, sorry, just a follow-up question there. So is there, and just for my own information, is like in terms of a timeline with this particular issue, what can we expect? Like, is it 2 months? Is it 1 month? Is it 6 months? Like, do you have an idea of that?
So vetting all the resources takes quite a bit of time, and also working with our IT department to get the website piece up and going. With a month and a half left of school and staff being off for the summer, I would say this work will continue into next year. But a goal would be, and I don't want to hold the internal staff committee to this timeline, but we would hope to get everything done and ready to go perhaps by November. We will certainly aim for that, but the principals that sit on your work group will bring you more specific timelines as we continue the work. As you know, much or many of our staff members are off in the summer, and right now we're really engaged in hiring and staffing and those pieces for next year. So some of that work, is not going as quickly as we would hope, but certainly this work is going to continue into next year. And we hope to get all those resources vetted and online, hopefully by November of next year. But we'll keep you updated.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I think that's exactly the same question that I wanted to ask about the timeline. Can you please confirm with the internal staff working group and get with the timelines and get back to us next month?
Yeah, after you can. Yeah, you can go.
Yes, we will update you on the timelines. Currently, right now, we're working on vetting the resources that have been shared, and we're looking to create a matrix, if you will, so it's easy for parents to use. And so we're working closely as a team. Then we need to work with our folks who support in developing our web pages to ensure that it's user-friendly. So there's a lot of work that we're doing for this. And we also have the three-part series, workshop series that we have created for staff in schools. We're presenting that three-part series to the special education and PSS staff this coming Friday, actually. It's going to be recorded, and it will be supported. It'll be shared with schools in the fall. We do need to look at how, again, we need to look at efficiency of that, and we'll be supporting the special education consultants, coordinators, and psych representatives at each school will be helping to work through that presentation with each school in the TDSB in the fall.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. That means next month, we expect you to confirm the timelines with us. Thank you. And yeah.
Sorry, I'll be quick. Just wondering, with accessibility, as myself, I have ADHD, and as I've expressed before, going on websites and things can be very overwhelming. Sometimes you're drowning. And I think the resources online are good to some extent, but I'm hoping to see that individual schools with principals working on these committees try to bring it to a more personal level at individual schools to be maybe put through newsletters. Is that possible? If schools do have newsletters or ways that can make it more accessible, not to be abrupt, but to sort of shove it in people's faces so they can see things, you know, on a weekly basis. At my school, for my daughter, there is a DEI committee. They're sort of lost, don't really know what to do with their committee right now. But I think the direction from this sort of group coming individual schools would help to sort of filter these things in on a consistent basis for people, not just sort of the website on a separate thing. It's sort of out there and parents don't look at it. They really don't. A lot of people who have kids with disabilities don't even go that route themselves to explore because they're so overwhelmed just trying to navigate everything. So is there a way to make this sort of more consistently pushing, not just ADHD, but all of these things in a way to families to make it more family friendly and more easier to just, I've always expressed this, guys, overloading is not going to really absorb. Too much overload for families when you're busy, you're trying to run around, do things, you're working, it's not going to sink in. So it needs to be reevaluated how you're getting this out to people.
Thank you, Brian. I mean, staff has taken note. Trustee.
I'm sorry, I'm always the person with ideas, but it's just an observation, and I appreciate if it's looked into because the website is not the best way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, trustee report.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. I forwarded through Leanne a list of links, so for people to read. There's a couple things I want to highlight that don't have to be decided on tonight. The first was both under the trustee report and under other business. The grants for student needs, or our ministry funding, was recently announced, and it's not awesome. There's no new funding. There's funding that's going away, and it's not being replaced. Sorry, there is some new funding for literacy and math, but it's a fraction of the money that we're losing. So one does not make up for the other. And some of the small increases that the government is celebrating in the grants for student needs are actually existing funding that was outside the grants that they're rolling into the grants. So it's not new money. We're not getting extra. So there's no happy surprises in there. And staff are going to be, are still working right now through our financial position. May 15th will be the finance meeting where we get the full picture and start the real budget process with the flexible funding that we have. So what's been done so far by the board and staff has been the allocation of the enrollment-based funding, and that's the funding that every board gets per student and goes to classroom teachers, school allocations of certain amounts of staff. But we layer in, as a school board, we layer in a lot more staffing and supports than what is defined by the ministry as enrollment-based. And so that part of layering in those additional supports that make TDSB programs unique to the TDSB, that process starts May 15th and will go through, our target date is for June 28th, final approval by the board. But given the late announcement of the grants for student needs by the government, may take us into the summer to get the budget process done. One of the things I wanted to highlight, sorry, that's under other business, there is a portion of the grants for student needs under special education called the special incidents portion. So this is a grant that pays for or supports students who need 2 staff. So this is supposed to be extra money to support the additional staffing for students with extraordinary needs. That money is very tiny. It's roughly $27,000 to support a student that needs 2 staff. The cost of a student to support a student who needs 2 staff is about $90,000 in staffing plus usually equipment and other programming support, so somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $110,000. So $27,000 is not supporting students with extraordinary needs. Boards were expecting the ministry to have reviewed and give us an update in the grants for student needs on how they were going to fund the SIP or special incidents portion. There was a tiny little paragraph in the grants for student needs that says, we have not reviewed it and we will think about it for next year. If you know how special incidents or SIP funding works, the board actually applies for reimbursement of the money after it's spent. So we have to spend it in advance. That means by not having reviewed the funding, it's not delayed by a year, it's delayed by 2 years now that we won't be seeing an increase in the funding. So boards have taken to writing to the Ministry of Education to express their deep dismay and shock, actually we use the term shock, that they're not considering this. So included are letters from the Near North District School Board and the Rainy River District School Board. We wrote a letter just this past week, and we want to share it with you. It's up on our website. One of the things I want to bring forward is that as a legislated committee, the Special Education Advisory Committee can write directly to the Minister of Education. You don't need to go through the board. So if the committee would like, you have the opportunity, and there's no timeline on this because we just want the minister to step forward. You have the opportunity to also, as a committee, write to the minister and express your deep, deep, deep disappointment in their lack of funding for students with extraordinary special needs. So if anybody would like to take that on, please contact me and I will help, and we can get that letter written, approved, maybe by the next meeting and sent off to the ministry. And posted publicly, because that is always a good thing. Sorry, and then the other piece that is deeply concerning with respect to education is if, I don't know if everybody's familiar, but 2 weeks ago today, the Ministry of Education, the province tabled Bill 98, which is titled the Better Schools and Student Outcomes Act. It is a broad, potentially dramatic changes to school boards, education, teaching. It touches a little bit of everything under education. It proposes to make sweeping changes to the Education Act. There are a few possibly good points in there in terms of some availability of standardization, like data collection and things like that, that would help with best practices. But there is a lot of very concerning language. One of the standout concerning pieces is nowhere in any of these changes does the bill center well-being of students. It talks about a lot of the ministry handing down priorities for school boards. Some of the standardization pieces that are concerning that we're speaking out against is that the language talks about standardizing priorities for school boards, which sounds a lot like one-size-fits-all policies and procedures. And we already know that doesn't work. It highlights, quite a bit of the conversation has highlighted or pointing to EQAO as the only real, like, their highlighted measure of success for students. I don't know if you've got kids that have ever written an EQAO test. You know that also doesn't work as any indication of how bright your kids are. And especially if your child has any kind of learning challenge, writing an EQAO test is a non-starter. So there's a lot that's missing from this in terms of student success and well-being. As I said, it's broad sweeping, but I just wanted to highlight a couple points. We are, the TDSB, so the chair of the board, myself, and Trustee Laskin, as well as staff, are actually scheduled to delegate to the standing committee that is reviewing the bill right now. So that's tomorrow. They didn't actually leave a lot of time for this tomorrow. Written feedback to the ministry, but the Standing Committee on Social Policy is also due tomorrow. I've included a link. If anybody wants to send them a strongly worded letter about prioritizing special education and the lack of any priority for special education in their sweeping amendments, please feel free. I attached an overview. So we've been working frantically, both locally in the TDSB and at the provincial, across the province, to prepare responses to this bill and what it might mean. And I just think I've lost my place on my document here. Oh, no, there we go. So some of the things that might concern SEAC in particular, the bill would give powers to the Minister of Education to standardize mandates, or sorry, to issue mandates on provincial priorities for school boards. Concerning language around focused on student success when the role of school boards under the Education Act is to support student success and well-being. And as I said, they left off the term well-being in all of this. There's a section on accelerated apprenticeships pathways. This is very concerning. They want to lower the age and speed up apprenticeships, which runs counter to the work that school boards have done to get rid of streaming over the years and to make sure that students graduate from high school with all of their options open on the horizon, or as many as possible, and early streaming into a pathway. They're talking about changing the graduation requirements for students to get them through these pathways. Streaming younger students into apprenticeship also has some serious concerns for supervision and safety, which we're just trending on a better track towards more safe practices. So there's concerns about that. There's proposals for mental health curriculum, which are, it's good to enhance mental health curriculum, but there's a distinct lack of mention of caring adults in the building, access to mental health programming, more getting rid of stigma, having more open conversations about mental health and well-being is great, but what students currently lack is funded access to mental health supports. And that's really nowhere in their recent announcements. And the other one, the other section where the language is really concerning is they're talking about giving the Minister of Education additional powers in limiting boards' spending practices. And we don't have a lot of flexibility as a school board in how we spend money. And it's particularly highlights, the language highlights reviewing where boards overspend on particular items. And I will say the biggest place where boards overspend, according to the ministry, on items is special education. I don't believe that there is a single board in the province that is able to support students within the amount of money that the ministry provides for special education. We necessarily have to overspend on their terms in order to support students. And so having the ministry step in to regulate items like that for special education, and a big chunk of where our flexible money goes in the TDSB is to support poverty. And those are, so that's very concerning language for us. As I said, I included the links. Leanna sent those out. Feel free to send your own strongly worded letter, and we'll be delegating to. Oh, sorry, Louise?
No, sorry, go ahead.
Louise?
I hope I didn't interrupt you. Thank you, Co-Chair Arts. I just wanted to share some good news, well, a little good news, from the ministry regarding SIP. They are giving us a 5% increase, and they're not relying on last year's applications, which were exceptionally low. So we're going to be moving from 4.75 million plus 5%, which brings us to 4.98 million. Still, I would say, does not represent TDSB's investment. And to your point, Trustee Arts, they are committing to a review this year, but it will likely take a full year. They have not yet got their approach for the review, so your point is very well taken. And your encouragement for SEAC's advocacy would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Arts.
No, I just wanted to say I'm interested in writing that letter. And I think the data we've requested from staff is more important than ever, because for students who take that much staffing to support, and this board can't prove that that's what they're doing because it's a reimbursement, they're on modified days and they're at a school. So if we don't have transparent numbers from the board about who's not attending, those children are invisible. Boards have to be held accountable for responding and answering to how many kids actually cross the threshold of their door every day, so that the ministry knows they're not funding appropriately.
Okay, thank you. I think that is, thank you, Trustee, for sharing all this background to us. I'm suggesting that all of us, we really take a closer look at all the material that, Leanne will be sharing with us through, from on behalf of Trustee Arts. And it is 9:03, and I think if there's no, great, objections, I'm suggesting that we don't extend meeting today. And yes, we don't extend meeting today. We push everything that we really want to do to next month. To next month, including some of the letter that we'll be writing to the minister about the SIP funding. Yes, is it something that cannot wait?
Sorry, it cannot wait, unless I'm misunderstanding you. We just skipped right over. I didn't want to interrupt Michelle because her update was great, but we didn't have an update from the Special Education Plan Working Group, which it's very timely right now because staff want to submit their recommendations on the plan to trustees. I can make this very brief, but we definitely need to have an update.
We have,
we got pushed. I mean, we always get pushed to the end.
No.
That's not our fault.
No. We had a conversation around the special education plan. You got, a tumble from staff,
But that was from
including-
staff, that's not from the working group. There's been so much conversation on this today. I don't see how we cannot address it.
I think that is,
I'd like to move to extend for 15 minutes,
I
please.
think that is, I'm sorry, there's not, I think that says next month, there will be, when they start sending, it is July, usually it's July, that it is sent to the ministry.
No,
I think,
sorry.
I think,
They're sending their summary special education plan changes, which they circulated to us, to the trustees following this meeting. The special education plan working group has done a ton of work all year. We have one specific concern with what's being submitted, and I think at the very least, we need to be heard on it.
okay, if they say this is a concern, I think if people want to extend the meeting up to 10 minutes, not more than 10 minutes, it will be very special, that is, if there's a concern, we don't want to leave, if it's a concern. Anyone, moving to extend the meeting up to 10 minutes, not more?
Well, I'll move if nobody else will. I will just point out.
I'll move to extend, Bronwyn.
Okay, thank you. Someone secondly? I see Ellen. Okay, thank you, Ellen. Or Tracy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, please go ahead and
Thank you.
share the
I'll
concern.
I'll just note for future
The
that,
concern, please, we have only up to 10 minutes, not more than that. We don't want to. Last month, it was
Okay.
a long minute.
I'll just mention, since how we run everything is a work in progress, we're all learning. Other items that are earlier in the meetings typically run much over the time allotted. So the items that are later in the agenda get squished. So we'll be cognizant of
Beating the
that.
time, or instead of going straight into the issue, you start going around. Please go straight
Right.
into the issue.
So this was going to be on the agenda at 8:15 and it's now about 9:05, but I'll go fast. Okay, I want to
Thank you.
address
Thank you.
three
Thank you, Melissa.
Three quick points. Number one, this is a very simple request, which I'll explain in a moment. Number two, since people seem to be curious, I'll just briefly touch on the process of all of the work people have done, especially lately. And number three, I'll just say, a lot of information was circulated, but none of it's necessary for the motion we wanted to bring tonight. It's detail, it's background. Some of our reps love and insist on detail and background, and some do not. But it's not necessary for this brief conversation tonight. Now, that was number three. Now I'll talk about number one, which is process. Special Education Plan Working Group has been meeting monthly all year. Most of us have been doing this for a number of years. We spend a huge amount of time offline between meetings.
Sorry for interrupting you. Can you go straight to the issue that will be into the plan? Something that maybe, if it's an issue, is it something that you put forward and the staff didn't consider? Please, that's what we want to discuss here.
Yes, I would, out of respect to all of my colleagues who have done all of the work who are not speaking tonight, recognize them. We have been working on this all year. We were fortunate to have our first meeting with Nandi just over 2 weeks ago, where she reviewed.
Again, Melissa, we don't have enough time. Just say that we
then
brought
please-
forward, the working group brought forward X, and the final amendment that you saw is missing there, so that we bring it up and have the staff to explain why they didn't put it. Consider.
Okay, Jean-Paul, you're taking my time.
No,
I
that is
could have
good.
finished the
We're
process.
Going into processes, we say
No.
go straight. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
We just found out 2 weeks ago which of our feedback was not accepted. There's one point that we're very concerned about, which I'm going to talk about. Since that meeting, there has been an enormous amount of time among the members of the working group who have met, have discussed, have exchanged all kinds of information, have shared documents, have contributed to writing, and we had a lot of feedback and input from other members who are not part of the working group. So I'd like to acknowledge and thank them for all of their work. Now, the issue is very simple. SEPRCs were instituted just over a decade ago and have for practical purposes allowed access for every student in every exceptionality to have their parent, if the parent wants a SEPRC, approach the school board and have a conversation before the child lands in the school board. We can go back and forth on the detail about when this was changed, but based on a lot of research, it seems to have been changed 2 years ago in 2021, but we didn't learn about it at SEAC until 2022 when we heard complaints from parents. So the very simple issue is, previously, any student with any exceptionality could access the SEPRC process if the parent wanted it. This has just been changed or attempted to change, continue to change, so that only, and I'm quoting, students with extreme complex medical needs can access a SEPRC, which is basically none of the other people, none of the other exceptionalities. Most students will not be able to access a SEPRC. So the very simple change that we're asking for and asking to pass a motion, which I circulated, is we would like to reverse the recent restrictions on access to a SEPRC. So put in different words, that means it's not just for students with extreme complex medical needs. It's for any student with a special education exceptionality whose parent is concerned about how and where their child will be supported when they come to the new school board in the future. So I'll just say this is a 1-hour meeting. It's very humane and efficient. It's worked very well for a decade. And we can debate details on what was the intent or when was it changed. We have data from TDSB from a year ago. I attached the chart that shows hundreds of students from every exceptionality have accessed SEPRCs even through the years when TDSB was starting to attempt to restrict it. So it's very simple. This is a parent-driven, parent-initiated, student-focused, very efficient conversation before the child arrives so that they can land in the right place with the right supports on the first day of school. It's worked very well for a decade. People would like it to continue. I'll just mention, and I should have acknowledged earlier, we have members of 2 families here with us in person. We have a number of families online who are concerned about this issue. Some are going to start delegating to trustees. So it doesn't affect a large number of families, probably a few hundred a year, but the ones who it affects a lot, and they really want it. And for those who are concerned that allowing SEPRC access will push students who don't want a SEPRC into that situation, that cannot happen. The rules are it has to be parent initiated, and if the parent doesn't show up, it doesn't happen. If the parent doesn't accept the recommendations, they don't happen. So on that, I have circulated a motion. I wonder if, since we're short of time, we might just do an up or down vote on whether people would like to pass it, subject to whether you'd like to extend the meeting longer.
You know what, if it is, I think that is, you saw, I personally saw the motion late this afternoon. And with the material, I haven't had a chance, personally had a chance to review the material that you shared, the supporting documentation. And you also saw other members' concerned. And I think, you know, the strong suggestion, I already told you this, I'll repeat it to you formally. Let us have this item at the top of the agenda for June meeting. And we'll have fulsome discussion. Everyone can come. I support, you know, SEPRC, SPRC, you know, issue. I fully support it. But we need to be fair to all the members. Let them review the materials that you share. And I really appreciate, and you know that, I really appreciate the effort and everything that you do for our vulnerable students in the board. So
Okay,
I really, you know that, I really appreciate that.
Yes, and
please, if I ask you for a favor, let us have this at the top of the agenda next month.
Okay, so
and to give the time to be fair to our colleague, so that they can review all the great material, including myself. I didn't have a chance, to be honest here.
Okay,
Yes.
so-
And some of the email that circulated, I didn't have a chance to review them. If you're okay with that, let us conclude the meeting, not having a long meeting like last time.
There are two hands up on Zoom.
Yeah.
And sorry, just before they speak, I'd like to respond
Yeah,
to you.
let-
Thank you,
let-
Jean-Paul.
let
I
people-
appreciate.
Let people who have, I see, can you see people who have, I can see.
Sorry,
Steve,
Jean-Paul,
Steve.
just thank.
Steve,
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would prefer to wait. I haven't been able to read this, and I don't need a synopsis. I need to read the material and to, understand it and understand what's going on. So at this point, I move to adjourn.
okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Broman, any comments?
Sorry about that. No, sorry, my hand is down. I agree with all the hard work, I guess, that's been done, but I don't want to cause any additional confrontation.
Okay.
On the top of the agenda, I support, I know there's a time restraint.
So rude. No. So, thank you, everybody. If that's how we're going to do it, that's how we're going to do it. I would like to just mention for future reference, if people keep attacking or criticizing the messenger, you're discouraging people from participating. I'm going to show up and bring the message anyway, but there are other people who would like to be involved, but when it becomes confrontational or personal, they won't. So if you want to stop hearing from me, be nicer so that other people are willing to stand up and speak. On this issue, I didn't have to send anything in writing. I had misunderstood you, Jean-Paul, but you were suggesting that in the working group update, just put up my hand and say, I recommend that SEPRC access not be restricted. So this is no good deed goes unpunished. I misunderstood what you had asked me. I thought you wanted me to send a lot of information. I consulted extensively with so many people over 2 weeks that it took a long time to put it together. People were involved in the drafting and all kinds of conversations. So no good deed goes unpunished. Everybody has a ton of information they can read and review now. But what I will say to all of our busy, wonderful volunteers is, if you don't have time and if you don't want to read that, you don't need to. The bottom line is very simple. The issue is we would like to support previous access to SEPRCs without restrictions. That's it.
That is.
It's a one-sentence
As I
issue.
agree, next month we will be at the top of that. I heard Steve move to adjourn the meeting. Anyone seconding?
Seconded.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that is, we make sure that this item is stopped. I think as speaking, Leanne already put that on the top of, the meeting is adjourned.
Sorry, just a
It's
little,
already at top of the agenda for next meeting.
okay, just
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff.
Oh my
Thank you.